Thank you so very much, Faith, and everybody who have come here. I want to say really thank you so very much for giving me the honor to come and listen from me. And I bring greetings from the people of South Sudan, all the Christians who have sent greetings with me to say hello to all the Christians in America here. I also bring greetings from my wife, Sarah, and our boys, Jacob, and Abraham, and Isaac. And yeah, so, and Sarah, and I wish I had put up the PowerPoint to see their picture. They are very wonderful people, and I bring greetings from them. I'm very much happy to be here with you because of one thing. I'm a Christ follower. I follow Jesus Christ, and this is one thing that I really love to always proudly say to anybody that I meet, that I am privileged, and God has given me the unlimited grace to call me His son and to be able to be a follower of Jesus Christ. And as Faith has already mentioned, I'm involved with the church so much, and particularly with our Episcopal Church of South Sudan, not the Episcopal Church USA, but again, we are one together. I support our Archbishop Daniel Dengbul, who is very much passionate about issues of peace building and reconciliation, where I met some of my friends like Matt there of Civic Society. And I'm also involved with the Anglican Church of Kenya, where I have been also helping the Church of Kenya in issues of mission work, and also where I have been lecturing at Daystar University as a missionary lecturer. And Faith has already mentioned to you about what I'm doing now in South Sudan. God has given me a vision to contribute to the building of South Sudan through leadership development, and that's what God has put in my heart. And I believe to develop South Sudan and to help in rebuilding South Sudan, we get to start it with the leaders. We have to work with the current leaders and also to develop others to take their space. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about myself, a little bit of South Sudan and how South Sudan is, and then what I'm basically doing. And as Faith said already, I come from South Sudan, and much of my story, you would find it in this book, God's Refugee. Is a story of me with many thousands others from South Sudan who have gone through the war and suffering. And what is recorded here is our life for decades of war in South Sudan. And I'm privileged that Lily and I were able to sit together and write it. And it's a story of pain, it's a story of a struggle, it's a story of hopelessness, but it's a story that Jesus Christ has revealed Himself. It's a journey that we thought we were doing ourselves, but we were doing it together with God. And that's one thing that encouraged me. In South Sudan, as many of you know, South Sudan has been in war for many years. In 1950s, South Sudan was in war. In 1960s, South Sudan was in war. In 1970s, South Sudan was again also in war. In 1980s through 2005, South Sudan, or Sudan in general, was in war. That is the war I have lived in. That is the war that I lived in, and I know it, and I have experienced it, and I have seen it. So it's a war that I have a testimony about it. And I'm not getting information from another person about that war. It is my story. I lived it, and why I refer saying that it is South Sudan that was in war It is because South Sudan was the place where the war has been concentrating a lot. And you may ask why there was that war in all these years. Well, it was war of identity and a war of religion, war of faith, and war of independency, and war of freedom. So it was a situation that came about because our friends in the north, the Arab people who were Muslims and became elite of Sudan, dominated the leadership of South Sudan, and couldn't share resources equally. Remember, or some of you may know, South Sudan got a lot of resources. We got so much oil, we got so much agricultural land, we got so much minerals, we got enough land, very vast land. We got all kind of natural resources that God has blessed us with. But we never exploited them, and we never enjoyed them. The interest of the Arab war came through with the enforcement of Sharia law, and South Sudanese people would want to identify as South Sudanese people. And that identity for years has been deliberately planned to be actually taken away and to be wiped out. We never had the opportunity to engage in our developmental services, to share resources equally, to worship our God the way we want. And that is why that kind of war was happening in all these years. The Northern Sudan and have done all kind of things to make sure that South Sudan was not to be there. And they're still doing all these kind of things that they were doing to us during those time of year. They tried very much to clear out everybody. When South Sudanese came up to be able to stand for their freedom, to be able to liberate themselves, the Arab Northerners would come in big forces because they had all the resources from South Sudan, and they had everything that they had, and they were educated by that time, and they deliberately wanted to wipe out people of South Sudan. And it happened when South Sudanese themselves realized we need to be people also. We need to enjoy in our world also here. And they came up and tried to destroy our villages and take away our people. So in 1988, when war intensified in South Sudan, it reached my own village. And in my own village, you know, in Dinka culture, we would stay in the cattle camps if you are a boy, so that you learn how to take care of cows, because that was the main professional that we used to have. And the Arab knew that if we do not clear out from the villages, then this war is not going to stop. And so they wanted to clean out everybody. They came and in my village in Baping, and they bombed us. They came with artilleries. They came by all soldiers. They fired on us, and they killed many people. My own father was killed in that war, and I got separated with my mother for more than 14 years because of that incident. And I reunited with my brother later after more than 13 years also. I could stay in one refugee camp with my brother for 3 years, knowing not that he was even there, because we were forced. We walked for many months, over 3 months, when we could just run in disarray from our village towards the eastern part of South Sudan. And then we moved in the forest. We could go without food for many days. We could go without water for many days. We drank our urines to survive. We ate from the roots of wild trees. Many of us died as a result of that, because they would eat uneatable kind of roots or leaves. And many of our boys also died in the river. as a result of wild animals in the river, like crocodiles would eat up others. And we went to Ethiopia with that. We lost so many of us there. And when we get to the refugee camp also in Ethiopia, it was a congested life, no sanitation, no food, enough food, no medical care. Again, we lost a lot of people. I would say when we were running from various villages and march out to the eastern part of South Sudan and find ourselves in the border of Ethiopia, we could have been more than 60,000 of us, but barely 30,000 or 40,000 of us made it to the refugee camps. And later on, when Ethiopia again went to war and we ran out to come to South Sudan, it was not yet peaceful. We had to run again and went to Kenya. We experienced the same tragedies, and probably not more than 20,000 of us reached Kenya as a result of that. So it has been a life of difficulty, and because of we wanted our freedom, and many of us would be subjected to that kind of suffering. We wanted our dignity and to claim our identity, and many of us were subjected to that. So that is the story you would find in this book. But what came to be really important in our lives is our faith. We would go through those kind of challenges and suffering and all kind of things, but Jesus Christ was with us. He was walking with us. We didn't know, but he inspired us with our faith. We would run and carrying nothing but our Bibles that we could have. We would run carrying nothing but carrying our crosses. Those were our belongings, you see. And so as we share this story for you, is going to inspire you to see where we are. And now South Sudan has gotten its own independence. And we are back to our country. But again, we are still in problems. Some of you would say, well, you have been out of war between 1988 up to 2005. You got the independence. What is the problem again? Well, it's not our problem. It is not us actually who are turning against ourselves. It is the same policies that were Khartoum using to divide us, to try ways and make us collide by ourselves, and those kind of things are the things that you hear happening now in South Sudan. We did not intend to fight each other. It's because many of us have been exploited to be able to create those kind of violence again. But there is a lot of hope for us in South Sudan, and we hope that we would overcome all the challenges that That's why some of us, when I came here to your country and study and got my degree, I had to go back and contribute to the rebuilding of our nation. Many of us in South Sudan, we wanted to rebuild our nation because we have been denied all kind of services. We have been denied education, health care, and all kind of things. And God is putting in my heart that through Christian education and through Christian education, we would raise leaders from South Sudan. We will equip the current leaders. And God gave me a vision to start Good Shepherd College and seminary so that our church leaders would be equipped and developed through that kind of facility. 2 years ago, even my wife said, well, you are very busy with adult people and pastors. What about children? Make sure you bring up children also. A year ago, we started our academy, Good Shepherd Academy, and in order to put together all the children and be prepared for the next generation. And God put in me also to share about our country, and that's why we came up with the Christian Time newspaper, the only newspaper that is a Christian news source in our country. You would still hear a lot of things are happening, and that's why many of us wanted to contribute. God is calling me to the area of education, development, peace and reconciliation work, because in our country now, you would hear statistics that says, you know, over 80% of people are illiterate in our country. And that could even be worse among the women. And my wife is privileged. She's in the university now. She could be like the, you know, the small percentage of maybe 5 to 10% of women who might be able to read and write. And there are a lot of situations like that. In South Sudan also, people do not live longer than 50 years of age because they don't have medical care, they don't have good feeding and good security, and all those kind of things. So that is who I am, and that's what I'm involved in, and I want to stop there.
Okay, we can take some questions, but first, John, would you tell us a little bit about the work you've been doing in peace and reconciliation, how that is working and where you're going?
Yeah. I get involved a lot with our churches in South Sudan, especially with Archbishop Daniel Deng, who was leading Committee for National Healing and Reconciliation. And now that committee, because of the current agreement, is merging with the South Sudan Council of Churches. So I am involved in that through the grassroots process of peace building. And we feel, the church is feeling that community people must be involved in consultation, to dialogue, to sit together and iron out their own issues, to come up with their issues that they are facing in the country. So South Sudan Council of Churches now, through the other churches, are coming together, and they are working together to be able to do a lot of community consultation, because the main thing now, you know, we have so many tribes in South Sudan. There are over 64 tribes in South Sudan, and to enable these people to come together is not easy, and the church is taking lead and doing community-based and grassroots peace process, and to involve those people. Whereas there is a political kind of political peace process that you hear is happening in Addis Ababa to bring together Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. The church is also involved in that in order to help them come together and run the country as one people. And those kind of processes are happening.
Okay, questions? And I'll give you the microphone so we can get it on the video. Anybody have a question?
Father John, could you just talk a little bit more about how Christ sustained you and the other refugees in the camps when you were really down and out, you were really starving, you hadn't any water? It must have been a very hopeless situation, so you must have had something from your faith that kept you going. I don't know if this is on, actually.
Yeah, it's for the camera.
You must know that in South Sudan, before the war, many people were not Christians at those years. But Christianity had been there through, if you know the church history, Nubian people were Christians, and Christianity was very much concentrated in the Nubian kingdom. And later on, when missionaries came to reach out to our communities in South Sudan, the Arab political ruling did not allow Christians to go to the south to start churches. And churches were not started until late 1920s and 30s, thereabout. And there was very limitation of Christianity. So many people were practicing their own religions, and that was their source of hope. But when war came, and many of our southerners who were in the north or in some other places came out and then start preaching in the villages. And then many of us become Christians. So I became luckily a Christian because my uncle was one of the preachers who preached in our village, and managed to bring people to faith in his village. And there I was able to know how to read the scripture in my own language. And when we ran away, I was able to share the scripture with the people. And that, we didn't have any other hope. Everything was taken off from us, and we were growing in the word. And the only hope that we could hear from the gospel message about the life to come was our great thing that we want to hear, because we knew that any day you will die, and we just know that we don't have any other life here, and I think when we were able to know that there is life after death, that became a serious understanding for us, and that sustains us. So we were not like, all kind of suffering that we were going through was not, we know that we are suffering, you will die anytime, and we hope that Jesus Christ would be with us. And that sustained us a lot. And we're very clear that, life after is the most important thing with Jesus Christ. And I think that's what sustained us so much. And a lot of miracles were happening among us. And through these miracles among us, we didn't have medical care, we didn't have, people to counsel us. The Word of God, the Bible, was our source of counseling. And God did a lot of miracles in our camps.
Can you tell us about some of them?
Yeah, one of them, I think it was around 1996 in Kakuma refugee camp, when there was huge outbreak of cholera. So we have a small medical facility that UN is running. And then many people were dying of cholera. And so few women, we call them youth mama, and they are called prayer group. They would pray every Saturday. And because many people were dying, and we are now in this concentrated camp, very small, big camp, but in a very hot weather, harsh weather, without enough food and everything. And then here was the disease again attacking people. Well, these women came out together with pastors in the camp, and then they put on sackcloth. They get the sacks of the sorghum that we used to, and they put it on, and went around to go around with marching, with the crosses, and telling God, well, you have power to clear us now. If you want to kill us now, just let this disease wipe us now, right now. Don't even wait for tomorrow. And then they went around praying, and they petitioned and said, God, if you don't want to do that, then stop, heal the people now. And then they went around, and then they ended the march at the clinic. And when they ended the march, everybody who was in the clinic, all diarrhea stopped. No more people were brought, and the cholera stopped. And UN people were asking, what is happening? What has happened? And so that's one of the miracles. Mark Nickel, who was our missionary, also got a cancer, and when he informed us about we prayed. We went to the church and we said, well, God, we need Mark for a few more years. And he came to your country here, got tested and checked, and he was told he can survive for a few more years. So he would stay as if he would die tomorrow, but no, he came back to South Sudan and survived for another 3-4 more years, accomplishing certain things that we thought God wanted him for us.
To do the people-to-people peace process, right?
And people to peace process, yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions?
You mentioned your
Oh, sorry.
You mentioned your academy, Good Shepherd Academy. How did it start? I mean, was it just amongst you, or did you get churches to provide funds so that you could build this?
My brother, who followed me, we are two in our family. we were born 4 of us, and the one who was ahead of me died, and my brother Joseph, who followed me, and then we still alive. The other one who followed Joseph is also dead during the war. So my brother is a very intelligent man, and he studied banking, and he was in the refugee camp with me also, and went to Kenya school, Daystar University. So when we went back after the independence in 2011, he was working there, and he got a piece of land in Juba. So he said, well, John, you have this piece of land. That was a year ago. I want to give it to you. What do you want to do with it? And then I said, well, I need to do a school. And then my wife has just told me, you need to do a school for children also. So I said, okay, but how do we do it? And then my brother gave me the piece of land, and I was sharing with our South Sudanese people and said, I feel like I want to do a Christian school for children. And then someone will ask me, what do you want? Then I said, well, I want to make a bamboo fence. Someone would give me bamboos, and then I came and fenced it. Then the next month, I was in need of timbers to put, just want to make a temporary classroom. You get to know also in South Sudan about the population of South Sudanese. Over 70% of the population are below 35 of age. And the UN statistic, and I think South Sudan statistic says also over 3 million people are children below 15 age of. And then again, another statistic says over 70 or 80% of these children are not going to school. So you have, last year I think they were talking about over 2 million children who are not going to school. And maybe about 1 million children are going to school, and if they are going to school, is a very congested kind of education, not quality education. So I shared with people, I wanted to do this to enable children come to school. Another one would ask me, what do you want? I said, I want timbers to put it down so that I make a temporary shelter. Okay, I will buy you timbers. And next day I would say, okay, I wanted an iron sheet. How many iron sheet do you want? I said, I needed 10 or 20. So another one gave me 50 bags of cement. Another one gave me some bricks. Bartholomew Ball, actually, whom you know, gave me 500 bricks in order to build a toilet for the children. So the South Sudanese people in Juba contributed small things in order to put up that Good Shepherd Academy. It's a basic temporary shelter, and that's how we put it up. Right now there are about 117. When we started in February this year, 117 children came, and it is outside Juba where there is a lot of IDPs, internally displaced persons, and poor children are attending the school, and some for the first time, and we have children aged between 4 to 15, and about 73 of them are girls, and so that's how it started. So it's more of a locally supported institution.
And the students that came from Gulu?
Say that? Yes, and even other, we have 4 volunteers, teachers. Some of them are South Sudanese who were from different countries, and they have come to volunteer and help.
Any other questions? Yes. What kind of opportunities?
I was curious what kind of opportunities there are for the children once they graduate from the school, and are they able to find employment?
Yeah, we do hope that, like with my school now, we have started from nursery school, that is the small children's school, and then class 1 and 2, and then we want to be adding 1 class every year. So we hope, and the school curriculum in South Sudan, primary school will take you up to 8 years, and then you go for high school for another 4 years. So by the end of 10, 15 years, these children would be able to finish, and maybe South Sudan would have done colleges and universities. They would be able to study more, and maybe in 15 years, private sector or agricultural sector would have opened up. And even right now, there are opportunities with young people now getting involved with NGO work or private sector work, and investments. Some people are coming into South Sudan with investment. Was it not because of the violence between 2013 and 2015 last year? A lot of investment would have happened. So there is opportunities once stability is regained. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about your own educational background? You mentioned studying in this country, I think.
Yeah, I studied my education at the camps. I have moved in several camps. When we first came to Ethiopia, that was my first time to go to school. I went to school when I was 14 years. That's when I started my class 1, primary 1. And then we would write on the ground, on the mud, you know, and we would be seated down, you know, and you write A, B, C, D on the sand, and then the teacher will come around to check your A, B. You don't have exercise book to carry home, and so that you do your homework. So I did my most part of my education in the camps, and in Ethiopia, in Kenya, finished my basic school there, and then went to Christian college there also in Kenya. A missionary who was in Kenya found me in the refugee camp and helped me go to a Christian college. And then our Anglican church also found me working in the camp and helped me to come and do my seminary here. And
Which seminary did you attend?
Trinity School for Ministry in Ambridge,
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
John, you said ABCs, so were you learning in English?
Yes, yes.
In Ethiopia?
In Ethiopia, because that was our first time to learn English, because in Sudan it was declared, you know, Arabic has to be taught, and Quran in all schools in the whole country. So people never had opportunity to study English, and yeah.
And what about Dinka?
Yes, I did it in the church. Actually, our church, all churches in South Sudan, they do vernacular teaching, so that people can read their Bible in their vernacular. So my uncle taught me some kind of like oral teaching. So I knew scripture in my Dinka almost off head. I would remember everything. And I would recite stories from the Bible, because my uncle was telling me. And
Sorry, I was just going to say, in your dialect.
in my dialect,
which is
in my dialect,
Bor?
Dinka Bor, yeah.
And how
Yeah.
many dialects of Dinka are there?
Ah,
Just to give you guys an
so
idea
many.
how
Yeah,
hard this is.
yeah, there's so many. There could be maybe 12 or 13 among the Dinka themselves. Yeah, among the Dinka. There are 64 tribes who could speak more than 100 languages and dialects in South Sudan alone.
And what year were you ordained?
2004.
2004.
Are there very many Bibles in Dinka?
Not very many. People lack Bibles now because we don't have a complete Bible. We only have New Testament Bible now, because we didn't have many people who, I could be one of the first people who have gone for seminary studies, and we entirely among in the Anglican Church of South Sudan, I would say there could be maybe less than 50 or clergy who are well trained. And so in my community, we don't have many people who have done theology and Bible translation. So we have not had our complete Bible. So people lack Bibles now. And again, it is not printed in our country, it's printed outside. So people don't have access to it. At the moment, Dinka Bible is scarce, you cannot find it. And again, majority of people do not have money even to go and look for it and buy it. But the big challenge now is not printed in our country, and it needs more money that the church cannot afford. And so people actually do not have enough Bibles now.
You also teach in refugee camp in northern Uganda.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
how that?
Through my college and seminary, I do a mobile training. We call it Good Shepherd Leadership Training Center. We go to the refugee camp and bring pastors together. So for the last, since I started my studies at Daystar University, I have been going back to the refugee camp. And you know, many of us were hungry on education. I would share things that I have learned from the school, and people would say, tell us more, tell us more. So that's how I started it. And almost after every 2 months, I go to the refugee camp to teach these pastors, because majority of our pastors have never had seminary training. And this is the only opportunity they have to come and spend a week or two and then learning about basics of Christianity. So for the last 2 years in northern Uganda, when refugees have been going back again to northern Uganda, we have taught almost over 1,000 layperson and clergy, teaching them basic things, counseling, reconciliation, and worship and liturgy, Old Testament survey, those basic things to help them disciple the Christians there.
Yeah, John, I think it's really important that people learn the Old Testament. Fran and I always used to say that it was like the South Sudanese were living the Old Testament. You know, the stories about in Louis, when the SPLA took Louis back from the government without shooting one person, it was just like something out of Jericho. So it's really important that the people get the Old Testament. Yes.
So with your school and like what skills are you trying to teach these students, and like what opportunities are there for them after they finish schooling, whether in the formal employment or in an informal employment? Like what skills do you think are most important for them? And like what's the situation right now with the South Sudanese economy for the students after they finish?
South Sudan economy at the moment is not that strong to encourage or invite a lot of investors to invest and put factories or other things. But rural economy is available, and as we teach our children, we teach them, you know, their environment. We teach them about, you know, their geography. We teach them about history, and we teach them religion. And so I do hope in the future these young children will learn about you know, skills to speak, so that they would be able to get involved in business, and I believe they would be able to learn more about their environment and agricultural, because South Sudan is going to really get more development through agriculture, even if there is oil resources. So opportunities are there for the young people to get involved. Only that now things are not that very stable, so people with enough money to invest and create employment have not done so much. But rural economy is available.
As a follow-up question, you were talking about just the agriculture. What's the situation right now with the farming there? Is there a lot of opportunity for, you know, more mechanization and more modernization of the agriculture so that there will be higher yields?
Yes. Recently, I think this year, the government of South Sudan, I think through development partners or other countries, got a number of tractors I think thousands of tractors, and got distributed into the counties. And I think to me that means a lot, and people can farm a lot. There is, right now, populations are concentrated around towns, and because of the 2013-2015 war, many people were driven out from their villages, and there's no farming that is ongoing at the moment. It might not be encouraging. Even this year, many people will not be farming because a lot of people have been displaced from their places. But there is that opportunity to once peace is assured and stability is there, people would be able to really farm and do a lot of rural engagement. Yeah.
Without farming, what are the implications for food shortages and hunger this coming year?
Without farming and not enough food now, that means so many deaths of young children, so many deaths of women. And South Sudan at the moment is one of the highest country that has the highest rate of mortality because, you know, children do not have enough food to eat. Many people are in the IDP camps, and the statistics say now more than 1 million people are displaced and or refugees in the neighboring countries. So that would be the implication.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. If anybody else has a question.
Could you just talk a little bit more about your role in the peace talks that you mentioned, and how seriously you take the U.S. In really working towards a productive solution there?
How the U.S. is involved, or how the churches are involved?
Please talk about how the churches are involved, and if you have an opinion as to whether you think the U.S. is serious.
Yeah, there is now the compromise peace agreement that was signed between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir in Addis. There is some progress now because languages have changed a little bit, and a little bit of implementation is ongoing now. I think these 2 days, Machar is being waited to come back to South Sudan and as part of the implementation. And you would hear language has changed. We call the other group opposition now, and so that is hope, you know, for people to come together and talk as opposition and the government. So that peace which was done in Addis by the international community and the regional countries is helpful now because, you know, it has created the situation of dialogue, and violence has subsidized a little bit, but there are, you know, few, because a lot of people are armed, especially militia groups, and from the northern Sudan, a lot of people are getting guns, and Khartoum is actually supplying a lot of guns to the militia groups, and you know, South Sudan is very remote, infrastructure is not there, so it's very easy for anybody having a gun to roam around in the forest. Churches are pushing hard that the political leaders would put first the country, and to make sure that, you know, country is in peace, and to restore governance and rule of law and other things. But those things you cannot do them, especially when there is, you know, war, and especially when there are others who are being in a hidden way supported to create havoc, and that is not encouraging for us. But there is progress now with the implementation, and churches are in forefront to encourage, you know, the opposition and the government to make sure that war is stopped.
And so, to that end, the education system and the need, how much is the need for the foundation of having more educated people pointing towards stopping the war, towards discipleship, towards all of the things that, I mean, is it more important to have people with knowledge who are educated to have that base, so then you could move forward with implementing industry and that kind of thing? So relationships are more important, maybe?
Yeah, I think it is the high time now for South Sudan to work hard on the individual relationship and during the many wars, the many years of war, people have done to each other all kind of things, because in war, anything can happen, and that mistrust has grown among the people. It's high time now, and especially church is taking this in consideration in a very positive way, to bring people together so that they dialogue and fix those relationships. And that's why it is very important to target Christian leaders and develop leaders. To me, I define challenges and wars and all these kind of things that are not going well as a result of unchanged heart, a result of heart that doesn't know Christ. So anything can happen. Somebody who doesn't know Jesus can accept to do violence, can accept to do corruption, can accept to do any kind of things. So the church role now is actually to really do all strategies to appeal to the heart of people and draw people back to the scripture and discipleship. And that would change the nation. It would change the nation in private sector, in government sector, in the church sector. And that's why I believe empowering Christian leaders is number one. And I think South Sudan now needs a lot of services. And through the services, and using churches actually, for the church to provide services like education, health, and it would change in a very shortest time.
Okay, well, I think we'll finish with that. John, I think too what you said about the children is so important, and training them, and I think we should all think about the youngest ones who are being taught hatred and revenge and things like that, and how to change that in their spirits. So I thank you for what you're doing, and we just ask God to bless that school and to touch those children, and the children, especially right now in Gambella, who are seeing people slaughtered, and ask that God would just heal their hearts and give them the ability to work for peace. So. Okay, thank you everybody. And brochures, brochures,
And $12 for a book if you would like to buy a book.
There you go.